My name is Evelyn. For 12 years, I poured my heart into Parker's Bistro. It was just a tiny family restaurant. When I returned from culinary school, my hands shaped every recipe. My vision turned our kitchen into a place people lined up for blocks to taste. I woke before dawn to prep sauces, stayed past midnight balancing the books. I watched my tangerine glazed lobster become the signature dish. It wasn't only food, it was proof I mattered. I still remember the night our contract with Pacific Lux Hotels came through, $1 million. My father Richard shook my hand with pride. My mother Margaret whispered, "You did it." That moment felt like everything I had dreamed of since I was a girl helping Grandpa in the kitchen. But sometimes the people closest to you can't see your worth even when it's shining right in front of them. I was never just the chef. I was the soul of Parker's Bistro. Every inch of that kitchen held my fingerprints. The battered wooden counter where I tested new sauces. The old stove that wheezed but never quit. When customers walked in, they came for something warm, something real. They came because they knew I cared about every plate. My recipes weren't copied from books. They were memories. I remember Grandpa's hands guiding mine as I learned to slice fresh herbs. He believed food could heal. I believe that too. People think success comes from luck or timing, but it comes from showing up day after day, even when no one thanks you, even when you feel invisible. I never imagined the people I loved most would be the ones to make me question if all those years meant anything at all. It happened on a cold January morning. We gathered in the private dining room, the one lined with Grandpa's black and white photos. I thought we were meeting to celebrate, maybe talk about opening a second location. Richard cleared his throat. That was always his signal for big news. Margaret sat beside him, staring into her coffee. My sister Vanessa was there too. She scrolled her phone, not even pretending to care. I waited, feeling my heart lift. 12 years of work were finally about to be honored. Then Richard spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Your mother and I have decided it's time to name a CEO," he said. "We believe Vanessa is ready to take the lead." The words fell into the room like a stone in still water. My breath caught in my throat. I looked at Richard, hoping he'd laugh, that he'd say it was some mistake. But his face was steady. Margaret kept her eyes on her cup. Vanessa finally glanced up. She had a small smile, like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. My hands felt cold. I tried to find my voice. "I don't understand," I said. "I've managed everything. The kitchen, the staff, the partnerships. I landed the Pacific Lux deal." Richard nodded once. His tone stayed even. "You're wonderful in the kitchen, Evelyn. But Vanessa has the business skills we need. She sees the bigger picture." Bigger picture. That phrase echoed in my head. Vanessa had never stayed past closing. She'd never held a knife. But somehow she was the future and I was just the cook. My heart thumped so hard it almost drowned out Richard's voice. I tried to swallow the rising heat in my chest. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. She twirled her pen between her fingers as if she'd already won. "You're great with recipes," she said, her voice soft but sharp. "But I can scale this place into something bigger. You focus too much on fancy dishes no one can afford." Fancy dishes! That's what she called the meals people waited weeks to taste. Margaret finally looked up. Her eyes were tired. "It's what's best for the business," she murmured. My hands shook under the table. 12 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, all reduced to nothing more than expensive plates and small ideas. I felt something inside me crack like a plate dropped on a kitchen floor. Vanessa kept talking, outlining her plans, cutting costs, simplifying the menu, turning Parker's into something easy to replicate. I tried to speak, but my throat was too tight. All I could see was Grandpa's photo on the wall, the way he'd smiled, holding a tray of short ribs he was proud of. He built this place on care, on respect for every detail. Now it was going to be a chain of cheap meals. Richard's voice grew firmer. "You'll still run the kitchen," he said, "but from now on Vanessa will make the decisions, the final blow, under her direction, as if I was just another employee, not the person who gave Parker's its soul." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark replaying every word. Vanessa's smug grin, Richard's steady tone, Margaret's silence. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything I'd built. By dawn, I made a choice. If they didn't see my worth, I'd show them what they were losing. I got up and brewed strong coffee. My hands were steady now. Determined. I opened my laptop and began listing what was mine. My recipes, my supplier contacts, the partnership with Michael from Pacific Lux. Those weren't Parker's property. They were built on trust I had earned alone. If my family wanted to replace me, they would learn exactly how much I held together. I walked into the kitchen that morning like always, but everything felt different. The staff greeted me with warmth I couldn't return. My mind was already halfway gone. Vanessa was there, clipboard in hand. She barely looked up. "We'll be reviewing your menu later," she said, her voice clipped. "Some dishes just aren't profitable." I nodded once, no argument, no pleading. Inside, my resolve grew stronger. By afternoon, I called Michael. His voice was warm, familiar. "Evelyn, how's everything?" he asked. I took a slow breath. "Things are changing," I said, "but I want you to know. My recipes, my vision, they stay with me." He paused. "Wherever you go, I'm interested," and in that moment I knew I wouldn't stay. The next days blurred together. Vanessa moved fast. She canceled orders for fresh seafood, swapped quality for bulk savings. Staff started coming to me, voices low, eyes worried. "Evelyn, she's cutting everything special," Ryan said. "What do we do?" I had no answer. "Not yet." Every meeting felt like another small funeral. My dishes crossed off spreadsheets, my efforts dismissed as indulgent. One evening, after another tense review, I slipped out the back door. The alley was cold and still. I leaned against the brick wall. For a moment, I let the tears come. I'd given Parker's my best years, but I wouldn't give it my spirit too, not when they were set on tearing it apart. That night, I called Diana. She owned Lotus Eatery across town. She'd always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. We met at a small diner near Pike Place. The air smelled of burnt coffee and hope. I told her everything. The meetings, the dismissals, the moment Richard chose Vanessa over me. Diana listened without interrupting. Her eyes steady, kind. "Evelyn," she said, her voice low, "if this wasn't your family's place, would you stay?" I didn't hesitate. "No," I whispered. "I'd walk out tonight." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time you stop calling it home." I drove home in silence. The streets were dark and nearly empty. My mind replayed Diana's words again and again. Maybe it was time to stop calling it home. I walked into my apartment and sat at the kitchen table. For hours, I stared at the papers, recipes, contracts, supplier lists, proof of everything I had built. By sunrise, the decision was clear. I wasn't just leaving a job. I was reclaiming my life. If Parker's no longer valued me, I would create something that did. I closed the folders, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. This was the moment I stopped waiting for permission to be respected. Segment 12. The next morning, I walked into Parker's like it was any other day, but inside, everything had shifted. Vanessa stood by the counter, giving orders she barely understood. She glanced up, surprised to see me so calm. I didn't stop to explain. I gathered my notebooks, my personal files, the little pieces of my work they could never own. Ryan caught my arm as I passed the kitchen. "Evelyn, are you really leaving?" I looked him in the eye. My voice was steady. "I am." He swallowed hard, then nodded. I stepped out the door into the cold morning air. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt light. Segment 13. I spent the day packing up my apartment, box after box of memories and tools, my knives wrapped carefully, my old recipe journals stacked in neat rows. Every item I touched reminded me of how far I'd come, of how much I'd given. By evening, my phone buzzed with messages. Richard, Margaret, even Vanessa. I didn't answer, not yet. I needed space to breathe. I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes. The quiet felt strange, but comforting. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't bracing for someone's judgment. I was simply existing. And it felt like the beginning of something true. Segment 14. On the 5th day, my voicemail was full. Richard's voice sounded tight, almost desperate. "Evelyn, we need to talk. Pacific Lux is pulling the contract. Call me." I closed my eyes. The $1 million deal was slipping through their hands. It wasn't surprise I felt. It was a quiet sadness. They hadn't believed my work mattered. Now they were learning how much it did. I scrolled through the other messages. Ryan, Denise, our seafood supplier, even old customers asking where I'd gone. Every word confirmed it. I hadn't been just a cook in the back. I had been the heart of Parker's bistro, and without me it was coming undone. Segment 15. That evening, my phone rang again. I almost let it go to voicemail, but this time, I picked up. Richard's voice was strained. Evelyn, please. We can't lose Pacific Lux. Michael won't return our calls. You're the only one he trusts. I listened without replying. You built that relationship? He continued. You can fix this. For a moment, I closed my eyes. My heart felt heavy. Why now? I asked softly. Why am I worth listening to only when you're afraid of losing everything? Silence. Then Richard whispered, because we need you. I drew a slow breath. I wouldn't give my answer yet. Some lessons needed to sink in first. Segment 16. The next morning, I met Diana for coffee. The little cafe was warm, full of chatter and clinking cups. I told her about Richard's call, about the panic in his voice. She stirred her tea, then looked at me with a steady gaze. Evelyn, you don't owe them your rescue, she said. Not unless they see you for who you are. I nodded slowly. For so long, I'd believed hard work alone would earn respect. But respect demanded more than silent sacrifice. It demanded boundaries. If they wanted me back, they'd have to accept my terms. And for the first time, I felt ready to set them. Segment 17. That afternoon, I called Richard. My voice was calm even. If you want my help, we need to meet in person, I said. Not at Parker's, somewhere neutral. He agreed right away. I could hear the relief in his breath. We chose a small cafe in Fremont. No memories attached, just a table and the truth waiting between us. I hung up and sat quietly, hands folded in my lap. For years, I'd waited for permission to speak up, to claim what I'd earned. But this time, I wasn't coming to beg. I was coming to negotiate my worth, and I wouldn't settle for anything less. Segment 18. The next morning, I arrived early. The cafe smelled of fresh bread and quiet resolve. I chose a corner table, a place where I could see the door and gather my thoughts. Richard and Vanessa walked in right on time. They looked tired. Vanessa's hair was pulled back, her blazer wrinkled. They sat across from me. No one spoke at first. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. Evelyn, he began, we're in trouble. Michael terminated the contract. We can't replace that revenue. I held his gaze, my voice steady. I know, I said. He called me. Vanessa flinched. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Vanessa set her cup down too hard. The coffee splashed over the rim. You talked to Michael behind our backs, she demanded. I didn't raise my voice. He called me because he trusts me, I said. Because I was the reason he signed with Parker's. Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Richard leaned forward, his hands clasped like a plea. Evelyn, we need you to fix this. Just talk to him. Convince him to stay. I took a slow breath. My heart beat steady. If you want my help, I said, we're going to be clear about what I'm worth. I won't be the silent cook in the back anymore. Richard's shoulders slumped. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. What do you want? He asked, voice low. I met his eyes without flinching. Equal partnership, I said. Not just head chef, shared authority, a real seat at the table. Vanessa's mouth fell open. That's ridiculous, she snapped. I'm the CEO. You can't just demand my position. I kept my tone calm. I'm not demanding anything I didn't already earn, I replied. I built the brand you're now trying to save. Richard rubbed his forehead, silent. This was the line I had drawn, and for once I wasn't afraid to stand behind it. Vanessa shook her head, her voice tight. You're using this crisis to take over. It's not fair. I folded my hands on the table. No, I said softly. I'm naming my worth. If that feels like a threat, maybe you should ask why. Richard looked between us, eyes weary. If we agree, he said, will you call Michael? Try to repair this? I held his gaze. I'll call him, I said, but only when the agreement is real. Signed, no more empty promises. Silence settled over the table. In that quiet, I felt something shift. They finally understood I wouldn't go back to being small. Richard sighed and leaned back in his chair. His voice dropped to a whisper. You've changed, Evelyn. I met his eyes without blinking. No, I said. I've finally stopped apologizing for who I am. Vanessa looked away, her fingers tapping the cup. She couldn't argue with the truth. For so long, I'd accepted their version of my place. The helper, the cook, never the leader. But sitting there, I felt no regret, only clarity. If they wanted me to save what we built, they would have to meet me as an equal. Nothing less would ever be enough again. Vanessa's voice softened, almost uncertain. And if we can't agree, she asked. I looked at her calmly. Then you'll watch Parker's fall apart, I said, because what made it special wasn't just recipes. It was me. Richard swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he picked up his coffee. I don't want that, he said. None of us do. I nodded once. Then decide, I told them, because I won't wait forever. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the cafe felt louder than our breathing. In that silence, I finally felt free. Richard cleared his throat, voice rough. We need time, he said, to talk to the lawyer, to figure out what this means. I nodded. Take the time you need, I replied. But understand this, I'm not coming back out of pity or fear. Vanessa looked up. Her eyes were tired. Do you really think you can do it without us? She asked. I met her gaze steady and sure. I don't think I said, I know. And for the first time, she didn't argue. We sat in that small cafe, 3 people bound by family, but divided by truth. After the meeting, I walked outside into the crisp morning air. The sky was pale blue, soft with promise. I felt lighter than I had in years. For so long, I'd believed my value needed their approval, that without Parker's, I was nothing. But standing there, I knew better. I was the one who built the trust, the recipes, the reputation. Whether they agreed to my terms or not, I wouldn't vanish. I had options, skills, a vision that didn't depend on their permission. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to start over on my own. That evening, I called Diana. Her voice was warm, steady as always. I'm proud of you, she said. Most people never stand up for themselves. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. It feels strange, I admitted, like I'm standing on the edge of something big, and I don't know if I'm ready. You are, she said. You've been ready for years. You were just waiting for permission. I looked around my small apartment, the boxes, the notebooks, the quiet. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was what freedom looked like, scary, uncertain, but real. The next morning, I woke early. Sunlight spilled across the floor, warm and clean. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table. For once, there was no rush, no dread. I opened my laptop and started making notes. Ideas for a new restaurant. A place built on care, not control. Recipes filled my mind like old friends returning. My phone buzzed with another message from Richard. Please call. We can work this out. I didn't answer right away. I sipped my coffee, feeling calm. They were finally learning what I had always known. Without respect, no deal was worth returning to. By afternoon, I finally called Richard back. His voice was careful, almost small. We've spoken to the lawyer, he said. We can draft an agreement, equal partnership, equity, recognition. I listened without interrupting. That's what you needed, isn't it? He asked. I took a breath. It's what I deserved, I said, but I'm not sure it's enough anymore. Silence stretched between us. You'd really walk away, he whispered. I looked out the window at the quiet street. Yes, I said. If it means choosing my worth over old loyalty, I would. Richard exhaled, the sound rough in my ear. I never wanted this, he said. I thought keeping it in the family meant keeping us together. I closed my eyes for a moment. Sometimes holding on too tight breaks things, I said softly. Vanessa's voice came on the line, hesitant. Evelyn, if you leave, I don't know if I can fix this. Her words didn't feel like a threat this time. They sounded like fear. I know, I replied. But you need to understand, respect isn't something you can demand at the end. You earn it. And for once, she didn't argue back. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind turned over every choice, every sacrifice. Part of me still ached for Parker's, for the place I had loved, but another part felt stronger than it ever had. I thought about Grandpa's old words. If you ever have to choose between peace and pleasing others, pick peace. I finally understood what he meant. I didn't hate my family, but I couldn't keep shrinking to make them comfortable. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't trade my self-respect to belong somewhere that never truly valued me. In the morning, I called Diana again. Her voice was bright, hopeful. Have you decided? She asked. I looked around my kitchen, the boxes still stacked like quiet witnesses. Yes, I said. I'm not going back. There was a long pause. I'm going to start my own place, I continued. Somewhere I can build something honest. Diana let out a breath. Then let's get to work, she said. You have everything you need. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. It wasn't relief. It was something bigger, the feeling that I was finally choosing myself. I spent the next days making calls. Suppliers I'd trusted for years, staff who believed in me. Every conversation felt like a small promise that I wasn't alone. Michael answered on the first ring. His voice was warm. Evelyn, he said, I was hoping you'd call. I'm opening my own restaurant, I told him. If you still want to work together. He didn't hesitate. I'd be honored, he said. Just tell me when you're ready. I hung up and sat in the quiet. In that moment, I knew something with absolute clarity. Walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I signed the lease on a small space in Capitol Hill. The walls were bare brick. The kitchen needed work, but when I stepped inside, it felt like possibility. I named it Evelyn's Table. Simple, honest, mine. Every day, I cleaned and planned, picked paint colors, designed menus. Ryan called to say he was leaving Parker's. If you'll have me, he said, I want to be part of this. My throat tightened. I'd be lucky to have you, I whispered. Piece by piece, it was coming together. Not because someone handed it to me, because I chose to build it. Kristen, my best line cook, showed up one morning with a box of knives and a determined smile. I'm done over there, she said. I'd rather cook your food than anyone's. I felt my eyes sting. Then welcome home, I told her. Denise, my seafood supplier, called next. Heard you're starting fresh, she said. I'm in, no questions asked. Each person who joined felt like another brick in the foundation. Every promise was earned, not owed. In the evenings, I'd stand alone in the empty dining room, and for the first time, I felt real peace. Opening night came faster than I expected. The tables were set with simple white linens, fresh herbs in small glass jars. The kitchen buzzed with quiet focus. I stood by the pass, watching plates go out one by one. Tangerine glazed lobster, yuzu seared scallops, dishes that told my story. Old customers walked in with warm smiles. We miss this, one woman said, her eyes shining. I nodded, my heart full. This wasn't Parker's anymore. It was Evelyn's Table, a place built on respect, on care, on the belief that I was enough exactly as I was. Later that night, after the last guest left, I walked through the dining room. The quiet felt different here, not empty, just calm. Diana came to stand beside me, her eyes soft. You did it, she said simply. I looked around the space. The clean counters, the stacked chairs, the faint scent of garlic still in the air. I whispered. I thought about all the nights I'd wondered if I was making a mistake, if leaving was too much. But standing there, I felt only certainty. This was where I was meant to be. A week later, Richard came by unannounced. He stood near the door looking unsure. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked over. Evelyn, he began, his voice rough, this place is incredible. I nodded once, waiting. He looked down at the floor. I was wrong, he said quietly, about everything. You didn't need us. We needed you. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I needed you to see me, I said. And you couldn't. His eyes lifted, tired but honest. I see you now, he whispered. I studied his face, searching for anger, but there was only regret. I'm sorry it took losing you to understand, Richard said. I let out a slow breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I'm not coming back, I said softly. I can't, I know, he replied, but I hope someday we can sit together just as family. For the first time, I believed he meant it. I reached out and took his hand. Maybe I said, but it has to be different. He nodded. And in that quiet moment, something old between us finally began to heal. After he left, I stood alone in the doorway, watching the street grow dark. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel bitterness. I just felt free. Later, Kristen and Ryan came in from the kitchen, still in their aprons. You okay? Ryan asked. I nodded. Better than I've been in years, I said. Kristen smiled and wiped her hands on a towel. This place feels right, she said. Like it was always waiting for you. I looked around at the warm lights, the quiet tables, the people who believed in me. It felt like coming home. That night, as I locked up, I paused at the door. The sign above me read Evelyn's Table. Simple, true. I thought about every step that brought me here, the sacrifices, the heartbreak, The long hours no one saw. I had spent years trying to prove I deserved a place at someone else's table, but I didn't have to prove anything anymore. I had built my own. As I turned off the lights, a quiet peace settled in my chest. If you've ever had to walk away to honor your worth, know you're not alone. Your story matters. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is start again. Before you go, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to step away to protect your own worth? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if this journey spoke to you, consider subscribing to the channel. There are more stories ahead, and I'd be honored to have you here to share them with me.